Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody who's joined us and who's watching us on this recording of Business Agility Live today. We finished our first presentation with Zahid Islam from Johnson Controls, who gave us a great perspective on business agility and how agile framework can help your individual process, your department, or your team, or the organization as a whole. That was a great presentation, good questions, and great insights from Zahid, which will help us excel our individual careers and companies and processes. Now we have Nilofer with us, Nilofer Darbari. She's an industry thought leader and senior executive with more than 23 years of proven expertise leading strategic initiatives with significant top line and bottom line impact across Fortune 250 organizations. She has an innate understanding of diverse cultures, working across Asia, Europe, and the US. And she has a variety of expertise and experience under her belt. She was a director of strategy and business transformation at Fiserv until last year, and she led multiple business innovations and transformation initiatives around go-to-market strategies, improving customer experiences, and cost optimization. Before Fiserv, she was the transformation lead at Hewlett Packard, which is HP, and where she was involved in design and execution of mergers and acquisitions, operating model transformation, and global delivery. She has also been a diversity and inclusion leader at Fiserv, a topic she's very passionate about. And as an industry leading expert, Nilofer has been key speaker to prestigious conferences across Asia, across Europe, and of course, the US, where she's based. She has also been a judge for reviewing business transformation and operational excellence industry awards at multiple prestigious events. She was also nominated for the Change Agent Award at the Women in Payments USA Symposium in 2022. As a passionate community member, she also volunteers as a vice president of G6PD Deficiency Foundation, which is a nonprofit foundation that focuses on creating awareness and advocating for newborn screening of a genetic enzyme deficiency that impacts one in every 20 individuals across the world. That's a great initiative that Nilofer is proud of and always advocates for that nonprofit initiative. And so, right from social engagement to working with multinational organizations to creating impact on a large Fortune 250 organizations, please join me in welcoming Nilofer Darbari, who will be talking to us today on a business agility topic and share her expertise with you. And please feel free to connect with her on LinkedIn and share any questions that you have if you're live with us right now. Over to you, Nilofer. Please take the stage.
So, thank you, Imran. And maybe I'll try and make it a little shorter next time. But appreciate all that you had to say in the bio. Just a heads up, you can see my slides well. We're good to go?
Yes, good to go, Nilofer.
Awesome. So thanks everyone for joining. I really appreciate you taking your time to come and attend the session today. And I'm really looking forward to a very good and engaging session with you. And I'm looking forward to questions and answers after we finish the speaker session. I want to start off by talking about orchestrating change or large business transformation initiatives that can create significant impact in terms of transformation. So I first want you to think of the vessels in your kitchen clashing on the ground, right? Imagine the chaos that it brings. And then I want you to visualize Mozart's Eighth Symphony and see how well it's orchestrated and how beautiful that music sounds. And when you think of that music, you think about how well and harmonized it is. You think about how synchronized it is. You have experts that excel in terms of playing their individual instruments. And yet you bring all those experts together and you create fantastic music. It's cohesive, everyone joins in and performs as a team, and it's extremely well coordinated. I really like this saying by David Abraham. He says, in symphonic music, when you are conducting, you're feeling the whole orchestra, thinking ahead so you can prepare for change. And you, as the principal conductor, in a large organization or a large business transformation, I want to show you how you can feel the whole orchestra, feel all your stakeholder groups, think ahead, and prepare for change. It's not surprising, less than a third of transformations actually achieve their goals in terms of organizational performance and are able to sustain these goals over time. And this is a study that was done by McKinsey in April of 2023, so pretty recent. What intrigues me is that in the previous seminars and webinars that I've done, in fact, with Imran and team as well, I used to use another study. I used a study from 2016 that said less than 70% of organizations with well-intended strategies actually execute them successfully. So nothing much has changed over the last 8 years. And the question is why? So before we start getting into the strategy and strategic initiatives, I want to talk to you about a little story. So to the left, you see this little hut in the woods. There's a family of 6 that stays in the woods. So you have mom, dad, a teenage daughter, twins the age of 8, and of course, grandma stays with the family. Now, dad has a beautiful vision. He wants to move to the mansion on the right. Mom is in love with dad. She understands dad. She understands the vision, and he has her wholehearted support. So it's now a joint vision. It's mom and dad's vision to move to the mansion, and they're really working hard towards it. What about the twins? Now, the twins, they love playing in the woods. But when mom and dad talk to them about the pool and their individual bedrooms, they're very excited. And they want to jump right in and help and do whatever they can to move to the mansion. But what about the teenage daughter? Now, the teenage daughter happens to be in love with her neighbor's son. She has made it very clear to mom and dad that she's not going to move. She loves where she is, and she's not bought into this vision at all. What about grandma? Now, grandma is petrified of the vision. Grandma believes that she's going to be relegated to the farthest bedroom in the new mansion, and she won't be able to engage with the family the way she does today. So you see, there's a beautiful vision that dad has to move to the mansion, and yet every stakeholder group is looking and perceiving the vision very differently. I want to give you an example of what happened at work. So I was brought in to work on a large business transformation. We had acquired a product from Europe that was sold to the largest banks in the world. And we, Fiserv at that time, had the largest market share in the small and mid-sized banks. So we wanted to look at how we take this product down market and we had to reduce the cost by 50%. So I worked really hard with the team, and we brought out a new innovative implementation model that brought down the cost by 50%. And yet, when we went to train the workforce, the first question I got asked was, am I going to lose my job? I had not done a very effective job of communicating the vision and the objective of why we were looking at reducing the costs by 50%. It was not a cost optimization story. It was a growth story. And yet, there was a lot of insecurity given how important job security is. So I've come up over the years with something called the strategic vision framework, and I'm going to give you a few pieces of it today, which plays a very critical role in terms of the transformation journey while steering the organization from where you are today to where you want to be, or the desired state. And it starts with building the vision. So what is a vision? If you look at a few companies, and I do this exercise when I do workshops, you will find that there are some companies that didn't even think of. And yet, when you hear that one sentence, you can immediately identify the company that it is, because they have really good vision statements. Now, a vision statement is typically meant for multiple stakeholder groups. It's a common long-term goal. It's not smart. It's vague. It's broad. It's aspirational. And it's short, simple, and easy to understand. But most importantly, it's inspiring. If you look at the vision statement, one of the first things you do is when I typically am driving a strategic transformation, I want to look at what is the objective that we're trying to achieve and make sure that we have complete stakeholder buy-in of what that objective and that vision is. But it's very important to make sure that you are aligned with the larger organizational vision. And so this is what I call the vision pyramid. And sometimes when you're working on a very large transformation, but in an even larger company, something like Hewlett Packard, you would want to align your strategic driver vision to your service line vision, which in turn aligns to the business unit vision, which in turn would align to the organizational vision. So you could have multiple layers, but it's really important that you get alignment with the larger organization. So once you put the strategic driver vision in place, and that's aligned to the organizational vision, that's the little yellow pyramid on the top. What I typically like to do is I like to identify vision elements. And these vision elements are the core foundation that's making up your vision. And once you identify the vision elements, you start looking at, okay, what's the work effort that needs to get done to make this a reality? And those become your work streams. Now, your work streams have individual goals, and then those get divvied down to high-level milestones. And then everything is brought together in terms of an integrated plan of record. So let's look at an example. It's a hypothetical example. I obviously cannot share strategy in terms of internal work that I've done with companies. But let's take an example of Fiserv. And Fiserv's vision, and I'm talking about Fiserv, the fintech, just as a heads up. Fiserv's vision is, our aspiration is to move money and information in the way that moves the world. Now let's assume that the strategic driver vision for a business unit, the payments business unit, is to become a fully integrated payments provider of choice globally. Now, when we start thinking of the vision elements, we're talking about going global. We're talking about being a payments provider of choice. And we're talking about being fully integrated. But then you ask the question, what geographies? Where do we want to be global? Do we want to go into Asia Pac? Is Vietnam a great country to look at for payments? What about UPI in India, for example, or the new payments networks in Brazil? So what are the markets and the geographies we want to play in? Of course, that also determines what are the payments products that we want to launch in those geographies, what makes sense for those geographies. And then when we think about being fully integrated, who do we want to integrate with? Now, Fiserv has a huge product portfolio. We will have to start prioritizing which products at Fiserv we want to integrate with. But we might also want to integrate with third-party providers in those regions. So you see, it's extremely important for all these players to come together, the key stakeholder groups, and to work on what exactly we're trying to achieve and look at the different work streams that will help to make it happen. So in this case, for example, you might have one work stream for US and another work stream that's international, depending on how your organization is structured. Or you might have 3 work streams, one for APAC or Asia Pacific, one for Europe and the Middle East and Africa. That's how we were structured at Hewlett Packard. And one for North America, maybe another one for South America, for example. So it really depends on how the company is structured to be able to identify and what you're trying to achieve, to be able to identify the different work streams. And then it's important for the work streams to start working on their own milestones once there is a broad agreement in terms of what the broader plan looks like. And then those milestones are put into an integrated plan of record. But I want to also talk to you over the years about the different strategic initiatives that I've driven, but also the different mistakes that I've made and the learnings and the best practices. So while working on these large strategic transformation initiatives, one of the big mistakes that most people make is a one-man band. And as you can see in the picture, I'm sure this guy is extremely talented. And I'm sure he's making beautiful music. But try and compare that with Mozart's symphony. Now, typically, a lot of companies, when we work on these large strategic initiatives, you're pulling in the best folks, a small select group of people, most likely the most senior people, and they're huddled in a boardroom and they're working out the strategy and the plan. But what I've come to realize is that most of the time, the people on the ground that are actually doing the work, they have the best ideas. Also, you need to involve the different stakeholder groups to be able to create that beautiful music and understand the impact of your initiatives on these different stakeholder groups. And so it's extremely important to bring everyone together in the room and make it happen. The other challenge that we face a lot during these large transformation initiatives is singular focus. And what I mean by that is we're so consumed with one path that we're not looking at what else is required. And I can give you an example of this. One of my last assignments at Hewlett Packard before I relocated was to look at, unfortunately, middle-level manager exits. And I was so focused on looking at the labor laws and what needed to be done in terms of the exits that I did not look at the other aspects in terms of what impact it might have to the operating model, or what are the other areas that we need to think of for the folks that are left behind. And so it's so important that you look at the big picture and look at it from different perspectives, different stakeholder groups, to make sure that we're coordinating a cohesive whole versus just a siloed approach. The other topic is about rewarding wrong behavior. Now, think of it, our metrics drive our behaviors. And a lot of times you work on these large strategic initiatives and roll them out, but you're not thinking about what are the metrics that we might need to change? What are the behaviors that we might need to change? In the example of the cost optimization work that I did, the earlier model was to look at it from a T&M perspective. What that meant is if you build more hours to your client, you'd get more revenue into the system. Now, when you move from a T&M model to a fixed price model where you've brought the cost down significantly, you want folks to put in just the right amount of effort to ensure that we are successful and we keep the costs contained. And of course, if you didn't change that behaviors, because earlier when you're looking at folks and measuring them on revenue that they bring into the company, that metric had to change. We had to relook at what behaviors and what metrics we needed to measure and reward our employees. And like you see on the stage here, if you're rewarding the wrong behavior, you're only aggravating and accelerating that wrong behavior throughout the organization. So it's really important to look at that piece as well. And the last one I want to talk about is poor sponsorship. Now, if you think about this beautiful street band, and believe me, I've heard a lot of amazing street bands. I believe this is in Europe. And they can play really beautiful music. But yet again, it would be unfair if we had to expect the same outcome in terms of their performance here with creating beautiful music with that of Mozart's Eighth Symphony. You can imagine the orchestra and the orchestra playing versus four guys trying to create beautiful music. And that's where sponsorship comes in. And for me, sponsorship is not just about money. That is a critical component. But it's also about time. It's about the time that a senior leader gives you to be able to execute this large transformation successfully, and the time that he's able to provide you of his team as well to make it happen. And so it's extremely important to look at sponsorship, monetary as well as non-monetary support and sponsorship to make it happen. So that's what I had today in terms of just giving you a very brief outline of strategic initiatives and best practices and lessons learned. I'm available on LinkedIn, and I do have this link that I can actually put into the chat session as well. Imran, if you can send it out to the participants as well. It's a little survey. I love getting feedback from the audience in terms of how you felt about the presentation. So I'd like to share that with you. And if you can share your feedback after this call, that would be highly appreciated. I'd also like to open it up for Q&A. I believe we should have some good time for Q&A as well.
Thank you so much, Nilofer, for that excellent presentation and giving us your expert insights and the story. You know, the way you you presented, the storytelling way of making the presentation. It's so engaging, and we want to listen more. But we are pressing for time, so maybe we can create like a for more than 45 minutes, maybe an hour presentation or a 1 hour 15 minutes presentation, where we can do justice to your expert insights. We do have a question by Lucas, who said how to tackle biases between stakeholders when they don't reckon with the vision completely.
I love it. I love that question. And just as a heads up, I
Uh-huh.
posed that question recently to another speaker that spoke about large business transformation. And I said, hey, how do you solve for that? Right? How do you, especially the senior stakeholders, when they don't have buy-in and they don't have their priorities, what do you do? Because I wanted to learn from him. But I can tell you what I've done and how I've dealt with it. It's definitely, especially when you're looking at a large transformation, you do come across teams that do not align. And the reason they do not align is they have different priorities. I remember an instance at work where I had to get the product team on board for this large initiative, but unfortunately, they had other priorities. They had burning fires that they had to take care of. But the point is, and I go back to that last one around sponsorship. Sponsorship is critical to be successful. Now, if you have the right sponsorship at the right level, you're going to make it work. In this example that I spoke to you about the product team, what I did not do, but I could have done, is I had the right sponsorship. So I could have gone out to a third party, for example, and got the same work effort done while keeping the current team engaged, right? The current product team, because of course they need to have a say in it. And so a lot of times, what is important is to share the broad vision, because sometimes people don't understand what you're trying to do. So that vision statement, engaging multiple stakeholder groups right up front and helping them realize what's in it for them, what's in it for their team, but also what's in it for the organization and what's in it for the community at large. I think that's critical. So buy-in of your vision statement, early buy-in of your vision statement is critical. What we have also done as a best practice in earlier initiatives is we work on individual stakeholder buy-in. And what that means is before a huge meeting where you're meeting a large senior group, you'd usually try and work your way with the individual stakeholders and individual senior leaders to have one-on-one time with them, to engage, to help understand their concerns, as well as help put out your perspective in terms of where you're trying to lead the organization forward. And that has really worked as well. That's really worked very successfully too. So I guess I gave you multiple areas, and I hope that answered your question.
I think, yeah, the last answer that you said about tackling individually, one on one, that resonated with me. When I was working in other organizations, I was working with an organization with more than 5,000 employees globally. So at that point of time, of course, there was a certain hierarchy, and it was always one individual checking with his boss. He was checking his boss, and then his boss, and so by the time we actually wanted to implement something, the time is already gone. So it's very important to find the right decision maker, approach individually, and make sure you're heard, and you show the value to get that next step, and take that next step. A very valid point. So especially in large organizations, this happens a lot, wherein you're very enthusiastic about a new process or new project that you want to take up, and you really put effort behind it, but management says, oh no, this is not the right time. Our business is not maybe as par, and maybe let's look at next quarter or next 3 months or next year. So happens. So getting that management buy-in is crucial. Getting that sponsorship is crucial. There was one more question that came across. with information and data available so easily nowadays, from consumers' point of view, how much anomaly is there in this strategy when we compare the framework designed for being a product centric, changing it to a consumer centric?
So can you repeat that once more? Let me try and understand it fully.
Yeah, so right now there's so much information data available from a consumer's point of view, right? If I have to find something, I have made multiple social media platforms, Google it,
Right.
ask GPT, ask uh, AI tools, and I can get an answer. So when it comes to that from that point of view, how much anomaly is there when in strategy when it compares to the framework designed for being a product centric organization to a consumer centric organization?
So, so I agree with you. There is a lot of big data out there that helps guide your decisions in terms of where you want to go. I don't look at it as a product centric organization or a consumer centric organization. Yes, you can organize yourselves differently based on what you're trying to achieve. I look at it more as the input and the insights that you're getting from what your customer has to say. So when you go back to that little visual that I showed you of the way the framework is, and I went through the example of Fiserv, and maybe I can even put it up again, or let's talk through it. The important thing is you're not doing this in isolation. You're not looking at it from an internal perspective only. What you're doing is, especially before you bring the teams together, there's a lot of qualitative and quantitative analysis that happens to make sure that your strategy is in the right direction as well, and to inform the stakeholders in terms of what type of decisions you're trying to make. So if you're looking at this in isolation, if you're looking at this purely from an internal product perspective in terms of where you want to go, you're not going to be as successful as looking at the external view in terms of what you want to achieve. But having said that, let me ask you all. I'm sure we've all been here before the iPhone was launched, and I guess you can't see the iPhone here, but tell me, before the iPhone was launched, which consumer, including me, had the visualization of this super cool phone? I remember I used to use that huge Nokia phone that I could probably bang someone's head with, it was a good defense tool as well that I had in my hand. And yet there was this super cool, savvy iPhone that came out and blew our minds. But were we asking for it? Were we questioning where that product was? So there's a little bit of a balance in terms of where you want to go and what the consumer is asking for. But most of the time, in terms of how the projects that we work on, it's extremely important to get that consumer view in, and those insights help inform how you're building out your framework, how you're building out your operating model, and what you're actually trying to achieve. So that is critical, I would say. And have I seen anomaly? Yes, a little bit, but I think most of the time, especially when I engage, we do a lot of qualitative and quantitative analysis. We spend a good 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes even 3 months, to make sure that what we're really trying to drive towards makes sense. And that's the whole strategy design piece that's so important. I hope I answered your question.
You've answered the question in a very nice way. And I was thinking about when this question was, when I was reading this question, Apple was the first thing that in my mind, because very few organizations can afford to be product centric and be successful, just like you mentioned about Apple's iPhone during its inception, and for a long time now they are like the market leaders in terms of the device, even the brand. So they became product centric, and now of course there is a lot of customer feedback that they gather and improve. I'm sure they will improve very soon. Last three generation of four iPhones were pretty much same. I think they need some radical change very soon to stay relevant to the audience. because now it's even on social media, on Insta, and everybody is talking about what's new in iPhone, right? That's one of the questions that they ask. So just a better screen or a better camera? That's no. We need something more. Maybe a foldable iPhone. I don't know. Maybe dual screen iPhone. I don't know, but it could be possible. There is a big change that needs to happen to stay relevant to the audience. Even when it comes to us, like for me, when I started Confexco, my focus initially was a lot on the product development. I created that community. Core focus was bringing everybody together. That was towards the webinars or the conferences or the managed web events that we do, and that's what my focus was. And but now the focus is more on understanding more detailed, narrow it down to region specific, narrow it down to topic specific, industry specific, and learn more so we can make our product better. So yeah, it's a journey. I think when I heard your answer, I was trying to reflect on our own organization. Like, how are we using that? And it does reflect. I mean, knowingly or unknowingly, we are not naming it, but we are doing it. So everybody has to, I think, understand that the value in it. So thank you so much for sharing that, and it opens up our own my team's perspective, my perspective as well. It will help us as well to improve our offering to our global audience. So not only in Europe, but also Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia. 2025 and 26, we will be going region specific, country specific, right from Vietnam to Indonesia to Brazil to Portugal. So there's so much thing that's there in the plan in next 5 years that we have put in plan. I think this will help us offer better solutions and better content, better education to our audience, and bring that community together. So thank you so much, Nilofer, for your time today. And I look forward to working with you again and meet you in person. I know
Yeah.
last time we meet when you were in India, and next time when I come to US, we'll definitely catch up. And look forward to seeing your presentation and listening to that symphony orchestra in person in Orlando in US.
That'll be great. I'm looking forward to it. And thank you all for attending. Imran, are you able to send out that link, or can I put it in the chat window for
If you could
folks
put
to
it in the
provide
chat,
feedback?
yeah, let's put it in the chat window. We'll share it on social media as well, so everybody has that link, and we'll also email it to our registered participants so they can respond to you directly.
Awesome. And let me see 1 second. I'm going to do that right away. I think I sent out an image by mistake. But
Yeah,
please go to the link and share your feedback. I'd love to hear from you. And
perfect.
I'd love to engage. I think everybody has a story to tell, and there's so much to learn from everyone. So I'm looking
Absolutely.
forward to it.
Thank you so much, Nilofer, for accepting our request to join at such a short notice, and I look forward to working with you again. Take care. Have a great day ahead.
So thanks so much, Imran. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye-bye.